Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started, and people can just join in as they join in. Welcome to the working group for the Truckee River Flood Management Authority. This meeting is about the Rock-McCarran project, and it's a overview comprehensive meeting. We're doing it at a different time than we normally do. We had 88 people at 3 in the afternoon the last time we did one of these. And one of the comments was, hey, can't you do this a little later so other people can join in? So that's why we're doing this at this time instead of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So thank you for coming. I know some of you, I don't recognize everybody's names. So I know some of you have not been to some of these before. And we will try to give you an overview of this park. It is a special project, and I think it deserves attention from the public. And so I think probably the first thing I should do is get into the slides and just start on the slides. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully this works like it should. And looks like it is working. So once again, the Rock-McCarran Flood Project. It's part of a larger flood project that we'll get into here in a minute. And the speakers tonight are George Robeson. I am the executive director of the Flood Management Authority, and I'm also the project manager of this project. And then Shane Dyer, who is a principal in charge and project manager, and also professional engineer with JUB Engineers. The purpose of this meeting is an educational seminar to inform the public about the progress on this project. So this is usually the way we usually do working groups for the last few years is these are a little more in depth. We try to go into a little more detail, and we leave a lot of time for questions at the end. We do. If you have a clarifying question like, wow, I don't understand what you just said. What do you mean by that? Or something like that. Please raise your hand even during the presentation. But if you have a longer form question or a comment, uh, let's try to hold those to the end, and there will be plenty of time for comments. We ran out of comments before we ran out of time last time, and there were something like 88 people involved. So I don't think that'll happen this time. I think that would happen this time as well. We'll run out of time or run out of comments before time. So the agenda is we want to just give you a little background on the history, purpose, and the need for the project, the importance of this location and the uniqueness of this location. That will come somewhat when we're talking about the alternatives analysis, the rationale and need for the plan to move the river channel south, the opportunity for ecosystem restoration and recreation with this project. And then we also want to compare and contrast two recreational concepts that we've been talking about. And that has been generating a lot of interest and is probably the reason a lot of you are on here tonight is because you want to hear about this and also make your voice known about this. So why is there a Truckee River Flood Management Authority? Why is there a project? It's because the Truckee River floods, and it's not if it's going to flood again, it's when. And there have been major floods on this river in the 1950s, two of them. There was a major one in 1986, 1997, 2005, and a smaller one in 2017. So that's a lot of major floods that can do damage, especially in the area around the Truckee Meadows, which is downstream of where the freeway crosses the river. Freeway 395, 580 crosses. Downstream from there to the edge of Sparks, the land is flat and low, and there is an awful lot of flooding. Places that get flooded include, well, let me just show you here. This is the area that gets flooded during a flood. Um, Everything in blue on the slide to the right or left, I mean, is getting flooded. So that includes big chunks of the airport. It includes the Sparks industrial area, big chunks of the this industrial area to the north here, the West Sparks industrial area, as well as the Reno industrial area down by the airport. There are other areas out here in Hidden Valley, Rosewood Lakes, etc. So there's a lot of different places that get flooded by this flood. To the right, you see these areas in green. These are areas that are being taken out of flooding by this project. A 1997 type flood um, would cause over $2 billion of damage for our region for this, just for the Reno Sparks area. And in this area is where most of the damage occurs. So it's well over $2 billion of damage in this area and approximately $2 billion worth of economic damage is taken out of, we would not have that damage if the project is built. And that's an overall project, not just the Rock-McCarran project. So the overall project is this, and it has 7 components and some smaller other areas that we have to look at as well. But basically, downstream, going downstream to upstream, Vista Narrows is our foundational piece. That is where we widen the river, we create some wetlands, we let this river flow and get shallower depth so that we bring the water level down in this area here so it's not flooding so much. And so when we take all these areas, like this area here, which is the Sparks industrial area, the airport over here, the Reno industrial area over here, all of this no longer is storing water during a flood. So more flood water comes down and it pushes more water this way. But because we do Vista Narrows, it allows this water to get out quicker and that it keeps this overall water level the same or lower. So that's the purpose of Vista Narrows. The next here is this red line, which is which we are proposing to be a levee, and we call it the North Bank levee for now. It's all along the North Bank, and it protects the Sparks industrial area. The next one upstream is the Rock-McCarran project, and it is unique in that this project has a levee on the north and the south side, and it has a large degree of purchased land that we purchased back in the 2000s mostly, and that land actually cost the flood authority, or it was the county at that time, in the 40 to $50 million range. So a lot of land was bought. There's about 170 acres here. And this allows us to let this river re-move around. It allows us to let it spread out so that we don't have as high of velocities and depths against the levees, et cetera, to lower the costs of the levees and some of the treatments along the banks, and allows us to be a little more natural in our treatments. So that makes it more of a natural type of a feature than what it would be if we didn't have that kind of space. The next one up from that, and this is the one we'll be talking about more. The next one up from that is the airport levee, which protects the airport. Actually, the Rock-McCarran project protects the airport as well. And then you have the Tumwa levee to the north, and GSR is in all their projects are planning to put a levee in along here on their side, which will protect not only the airport but all their infrastructure, including their new basketball stadium they're planning to build. And this has previously been built before that. It's called the Colonies Levee and Flood Wall. It's up by where the Walmart is, and that was built back in 2009. So that is the entire project. If this thing is implemented, like I said, it could prevent about $2 billion in economic damage. And that's why we're interested in building this. We don't want people losing jobs. We don't want to lose tax revenue. We don't want to see people lose their homes, etc. So that's what's motivating us to carry on in this project. Is everybody seeing this okay and can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just make sure. Okay. Um, so the project benefits, and we're now focusing on the Rock-McCarran project, is of course flood risk reduction. This is actually the river at Rock-McCarran. There's It includes river realignment to the south. It includes levees on both north and south. It includes terracing to lower some of these banks down to give more room for the river to move around, create side channels and other things to make it a more well-connected system with more native vegetation. But it also helps with the levees as well to protect them. And then it increases the flood storage and area capacity within this area to help reduce the peak at the very highest floods. There's also environmental restoration, which is to reduce bank erosion, add secondary channels, construct pools and riffles to develop aquatic habitat diversity. This is, there are some nice features in here, but it is generally a degraded reach of the river. And so we're trying to get this back to a more natural type of river that will be more sustainable, that we don't have to keep training and forcing into a form because it wants to get out of that form all the time. So that's what we're trying to do there. And we're trying to reconnect the river to the floodplain, which allows us to have more natural vegetation, preserve the existing riparian vegetation. That's a big deal in how the consultants will configure or did configure the design to wherever we had natural or native vegetation, we tried to avoid, excavation in those areas to keep what was there. And then also establish new wetland and riparian vegetation. Finally, the enhanced recreational opportunities that we'll talk about later in the talk, which I think most of you are coming here for, but those are also very important. That's mostly on the upper terrace that doesn't get flooded very often, but it does get flooded. So when you look at this project, it's important to understand the scale of this project. What these little things in white are Oxbow Parks up in Reno. So you notice that there's like four of them that can fit pretty well within just the river portion of this configuration. So if you look at the Rock-McCarran area, just the part that if this was this actually represents the sports fields options, just in the area of the river, even with the sports field that's natural, this natural part is four Oxbow Parks, which, it's over 100, it's about 100 acres. Then you go down in here, you could probably put another two Oxbow Parks in this area. So you'd have about six of them. This is Idlewild Park, just to give you an idea. So this is how big Idlewild Park is. You can see you probably can get in this whole area, probably three and a half Idlewild Parks. So that's how big this area is. This is over a mile of river frontage, 1.2 miles to be exact, under this configuration of river. And it's just a large area that has a lot of possibilities where we're trying to optimize everything for flooding, for river restoration, as well as recreational opportunities. So with that, I would like to kick the presentation over to Shane Dyer, who is the lead engineer on this project. And they previously did an alternatives analysis, and also they've been working on the 30%. So they've actually gotten beyond this. But this was a very important step for us to understand what to do with the river and kind of where the terracing should go. So with that, Shane, could you take this on, and I'll run the slides. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, thanks, George. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I hear you great.
Great. Well, good job. I feel like you did a good job stressing there how important this project is, and we're happy to be a part of it. So The alternatives analysis happened a little while back now, and we did a lot of work on a lot of different alternatives. And we looked at, we had hundreds of model runs, and we looked at all these elements that you see in these bubbles: flood, environmental, geotech, geomorph, recreation. And we had, 30 plus professionals working on it. And we gathered an enormous amount of data, and we came up with 8 alternatives that we analyzed, that we took to the final analyzation and put them in a matrix, and we ranked them. And then we had a public meeting back then about it. This is kind of a catch up here. And we took it to TURFMA and the board, and we had a preferred alternative that popped out. So I think next slide there. We're going to talk a little bit about why make these changes. So the current river, and George spoke this a little bit, the health of the river is poor. It's incised, meaning that the floodplain and the river itself aren't connected very well. There's a lot of man-made constraints, and it doesn't have a good natural process because it's changed so much. You can see it in the historical, that overlay, the orange below. A more healthy river would have some braidings and some oxbows. The current river in blue is completely constrained. And from the start of this project, the original TURFMA working group and all the Flood Project Community Coalition, the goal of the project has always been flood management, and then improve the ecosystem, and then look for those recreation opportunities. This just illustrates some more about the issues with the river. On the left, you can see the channel incision. When it goes so deep, it's not connected to the floodplain like the image in panel A. Panel B is incised. That's the current state of the river, panel B. In the second image, you can see that the habitat has really gone away. It's been just kind of pushed in by the development of the farming, and it's just really constrained. So there's kind of a lack of the biodiversity, and the pools and riffles aren't where they should be for fish habitat. And then the last one there is just like a typical picture. That's like the bank of the river on the right, with concrete walls, big riprap, high incision in the river, no connection to the riparian zone. So that's just the existing river conditions. Here you can see how much riprap is being used currently on the river. All the red, essentially every cut bank is constrained, and the river is just constrained and continues to incise. So it gives you another indication of how it's really just a man-made reach at this point, and we really need to return it to a more natural state. Some of the challenges, one of the big challenges that we had to consider was the space constraints. So the existing river alignment is right up against some major industrial buildings. And it's a real problem when you're trying to fit a levee in there that it has to be, 50 feet wide in total to meet Army Corps of Engineers standards. And the flood wall is not a good option. City of Sparks and people around there, they don't want a flood wall that they can't get to the river. So if you put a flood wall, you can't even get to the river. And so that was a real challenge that we had to work through, is the constraint with the buildings, and then allowing for maintenance as well. It is a complicated geomorphology site. So there's a shift in the slope right at our site. And so it's been fun to go through the geomorphology and to really work to engineer with the natural process instead of against it, which is kind of in the history here, is they're working against what the river wants to do. And we've been just, working and to figure out what the river wants to do, and then allowing it to do that and create the meander belts and spread out that river flow and minimize the hard man-made treatments. Those are part of the goals. And we also preserve a significant amount of the existing cottonwood galleries, which was a big goal that TURFMA had for us, try and keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff, essentially. Other things, cost considerations and efficient design. There's a lot that goes into making it an efficient design, with operation and maintenance, with the velocities of the river and how they scour, and where you're going to have maintenance in the future. and where this is a floodable, the entire area, including the potential recreation and park areas, are totally floodable. So how do we maintain that in a way that is cost effective? And then balancing the on-site materials, because there's a lot of earthwork that goes into this, and of course of avoiding the flood walls. Okay, this just talks about how, okay, we had a preferred alternative and there were a bunch of recommendations on how to modify it. So these slides go over the recommendations for modifying the preferred alternative. And when you look starting from the left at 0, we essentially use the existing Truckee River as part of the meander belt. And we engineer a secondary channel with a weir elevation that works in the flooding and that activates at certain flow regimes. Down at number 1, we added some wetlands, for some different habitat. That was something that came out in the preferred alternative. Number 2 is very similar in that we lowered it and kind of allowed for a different riparian zone. And we also moved it away from the Cottonwood Gallery. That island, that entire island that George is pointing to right now, is preserved Cottonwood Gallery with old tree growth that will just integrate right into the park. Next slide, number 3. So this was a pond feature in the original design, and we changed it to be a flow feature. So you see now in this preferred, or the modified preferred, it's a flow feature, so water will go right through. Number 4, we actually shifted the river away from the levee right there. It actually went closer to the levee and put a little more stress on that levee. The way we moved it leaves the levee more protected. Let's see. And then, that was number 4. Number 5, yeah, we shifted that flow as well. So it had a more direct path for the upstream flows and reduced the avulsions. Like before it was going straight into it, and we kind of made it come off the side of the river so that it wouldn't avulse, or the river wouldn't break out there quite as easy. That was a comment that we did there. Next slide. Okay, 6 and 9 are very similar. We actually created these kind of braided features that are actually active in the low flow. So even at 300, the average low flow about 350 CFS, 6 and 9 are actually active. And so it becomes kind of this braided, meandering type river. So we added those features. It includes, and it adds habitat as well there. Number 7, we made that a little stronger, that island too, and made it so that it was protected against the river breaking through that spot. And 8 we changed it to a 2-year interval for that to be inundated on 8 on that weir. And so those were the changes there. And then 9 and 10, like I had said, 9 that continues to be a channel at low flow for more habitat. And then 10, we moved it so that the river loads underneath the bridge easier. So we turned the river a little earlier and tried to straighten it out to go right underneath the bridge at McCarran. So those were, and if you were to see the original and this one, it wouldn't look that much different, but it actually is a significant number of improvements that we made there.
And just to add, this was done with a team of geomorphologists and hydraulic engineers working together, and also trying to figure out what kind of treatments that they would have to do, and also looking at a very detailed 2-dimensional model to see what these things do to these levees. There's these outer levees, and then there's this intermediate levee as well that goes down the middle. So they wanted to check all that to make sure that this was working properly, and getting a solution that minimizes maintenance costs in the future. Hopefully the river will work with us and cooperate with us instead of fighting against it, what it does now. And so that was a lot of thought went into this. There was a lot of a lot of back and forth and looking at this and running models and trying to make sure it worked right.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Now we're going to go over the inundation maps, which are interesting to look at. So we'll look at the low flow, 200, the 300, and then the various return intervals for the floods. So this is your 350 average low flow. So this is right now the Truckee River. Right before the rain, it was running at about 350 CFS. So last week we were about 350 CFS. This week we're up to 600 with the rain. But this is what it would look like most late summers, and you'd see quite a bit of side channels and habitat and connection with some backwater channels there for fish rearing, um, a complex river system with lots of habitat. That is what it will look like even in the low flow.
Yeah, and the river is in blue here. These are just different elevations from the terrain in these other colors.
Looks like you got a hand up.
Thank you. This is Trina. I was just going to suggest you describe what the colors are because that makes it more understandable. I appreciate that.
Okay, well, great minds think alike, Trina.
That's right.
Okay, the 5 year, this is where you start to see definitely more interaction with the floodplain. So you've got water all up on the terraces and really inundating the majority of the terraced area and the riparian zone there.
And you see the blue is starting to take over in these areas now. But one thing that's interesting too is this gallery is still holding firm. It's high enough where it's not just getting blasted out at 5 year.
Yeah. 50 year, I mean, this is a big flood. The whole thing is almost inundated. You will notice that there is an interior berm that is holding back the water at this point, that is keeping the south side of this future recreation area dry in fairly large floods. So we did that on purpose for O&M and operation and maintenance, that is, and for life safety, so it holds back the water in fairly large floods. But then as we go to our next flood, the 100 year, you'll see the entire area is inundated. And this is where we start to see reductions in the peak. It takes some flow off the peak flow on the main flood as it comes through, because we're storing some water in here. And then I think oh yeah, that's as far as we go.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a 117, but I put it in.
Yeah, so that gives you a good idea of what it will look like in a 1997 flood. It would look similar to this, and it would be keeping all those industrial areas dry. So essentially flow containment, this is the intermediate berm. There's flow containment there in the range of 50 to 75 year flood. And we tested various notch locations and weir locations, and we ran it over and over again to try and figure out how to use that flood storage most effectively to get the maximum benefit out of it to keep the peak low. Currently, there's two notched weirs that fill it up, that gave us the best results on how to reduce the flood downstream, essentially. So we had careful design of the berm overtopping, and this is a consideration for O&M and for the scour protection. So you can see the flow lines where there's long white lines, that's fast water, and where it's more like a dot, that's slow water. And so at the bottom of this picture, you can see in the storage area, that's like this is slow flow. And then we designed it so that the flow equalizes and then flows out over the berm in a way that it takes debris flow and the trees and branches, and it tries to get them out of there. And it doesn't go to one spot. It has kind of a uniform overtopping back out of the berm. And it's all part of the design that was carefully considered to reduce the overall operation and maintenance of when the flood happens, what's going to occur at the site.
So this is where there would either be a nature area or or ball fields. And what's nice is see how all these things are short. That means they're not getting challenged by high velocity water and scoured. And also because this is flowing out, you're not having a bunch of debris coming in to land in here. So the idea is to protect this area so it doesn't require a lot of maintenance after a major flood.
All right, this is a cross-sectional view of the river, and it kind of helps you to understand what it would look like all the way starting at the north levee over at 0, kind of at the top of the image. And you can see how it comes down into that secondary backwater channel, which is the existing river, and then back up and then up into the preserved cottonwoods. And this will all stay the same with those old growth cottonwoods. And then we have this side channel, this side low flow channel, some terracing and habitat through the middle of that, and then the main channel of the river. Then it goes up into that internal intermediate berm that protects the recreation area and the storage area. And then that storage area is where we would have the flat fields or just the nature park area, whichever direction that heads, and then the south levee. This is the same cross section downstream, and essentially the changes in here are that the levees get taller. The further we go downstream, the taller the levees get, just because of the natural slope of the land and the river, and to hold the flood in. So we have very similar preserved cottonwoods, secondary channels, terracing, main channel, internal berm, and storage area with the recreation.
Okay, well, that's kind of the gist of all the work that's being done on the river and the alternatives analysis, and the geomorphology people and the geotechnical are refining all of this right now for the 30% design. What I'd like to get into now is talk about the recreational concepts that are in the upper terrace. So that's on the other side of that intermediate berm, that flat area that we just saw in cross section in those two cross sections. That's the area that would either be a nature park type concept or a flat fields. Either one of these concepts, though, the river area is natural. So there are trails, buffers, lots of things like that in the river area. That's 100 acres. Like I said, 4 oxbow parks with either of the concepts. This one here would actually have an additional about 70 acres of further natural areas and some parking and restrooms, etc. So if we want to talk about the immensity of this, I showed you some overlays. And, if you add up, Wood Rogers did this for us to figure this out, and they're one of our sub-consultants. But if you look at Oxbow Park, Idlewild Park, Dorchester Park, Mayberry Park, Rock Park, Wingfield Park, these are all the river parks. Now, I think there's one or two that we're missing here, like Glendale, which is actually part of this park. But there are a few that we're missing, but these are the major river parks, 157 acres. This one plot of land is 168 acres. And it's a park on both sides of the river. So I know Wingfield is also on both sides, and so is Mayberry and Dorchester at places. But it is impressive that we have 1.2 miles on both sides of the river here. And so, anyways, there's a lot of things going on in these areas. It's a lot of different landowners in the past. This was an industrial park right here. And you can see like the concrete pads that would have to be, basically broke up and moved out. There was farming here. This is the Ferrari Farms. They still, even though we purchased this property years ago, we've been working with them and allowing them to lease it back from us on a maintenance lease. And then over here, we have another agricultural person that leases property from us. They do maintenance for us, and then we let them just use the agricultural land. And here, the old cooperative station, the UNR cooperative station, the Kiwanis Club is using this for a bicycle center. And then there's a garden that actually Green Vibe actually does work with the garden. And Green Vibe actually helps us in this area to work on plant management, etc. So there's a lot of things going on even right now that we do in this area, but this area has a lot of diversity and different ownerships, different conditions. Like this is all, asphalt right now. So some areas are agricultural. Some areas actually look pretty good, like this one up here. So this is the current condition of the project. Now, one of the things that we talked about in a previous meeting is recreational elements need to be flexible and flood resistant. Certain types of things do not bode well for a floodable area. Like for instance, pickleball courts. Those are hard courts. There's fences, there's things, every debris can get hung up on. They will take some damage in a flood. So that's not something you really want to have in a floodable area. We also wouldn't want a sand volleyball court because even though the current is low, it may pick up that sand and move it, and then there would be contamination in the sand from debris coming in, etc. Hard structures, especially ones that aren't flood resistant, that's not good. Even place structures that are made of wood like this, they could be damaging. They're also an attractant to children to be playing in a floodable area, maybe when a flood's coming. So you may want to tone down these types of features in a floodable area, and skate parks is a hard structure. So these are the kind of things you don't really want to do in a floodable area. And the idea with both concepts, whether it's the nature park or the other concept, you want to have things that are floodable, natural, as much as possible. So, things like a bridge, perhaps, trails, pollinator gardens, access to the river, maybe some passive art installations. That's not very passive there, but just that's an art there. But picnic facilities, trailheads, signage and interpretive signage, those kind of things. And then when you talk about the recreation complex, it's basically these things along with these fields, and more parking. There would need to be more parking to serve what would happen during tournaments or big days where there's lots of league action or something like that. There'd need to be more parking and more facility and more ingress and egress with roads because of the concentrated use that happens. So either one of these is going to have these kind of elements along the river, but the difference is up here. Do you want something like, this or a big field versus something like this where these are defined flat fields for soccer or other flat field sports. So in the nature park concept, you can see here that there's the upper area is left in trees, and I have another one that'll bring this out a little bit more, but a lot of this area is left in trees. This is a big open field. There's just there's trails even in this area as well, that both of these have lots of trails. Both options have lots of trails, but this one also has trails up in this area as well. So increased trails, passive, less parking, one entrance and outlet because there's not as much use. So those are the kind of things that you'll see with this nature park option. Here's another look at it in a more defined way. Everywhere where you have these dark green colors, these are tree galleries. Everywhere you see these other kind of blobs, these other colors, these are different shrub types. So this whole upper terrace that's a storage area is full of, different kinds of shrubs, big grassy areas, things like that. Whereas in the river area, there are a lot of tree galleries in certain places with this concept as well as the other concept in the river area. So the river one, this is interesting too, that, the river part is exactly the same pretty much. I didn't say this in the nature part, but there are 3 access points for kayaking, canoeing, something like that, depending on the water intensity. And there's three entrance points, so you can these would probably be about a half a mile each, or well, this one would be a little less than a half mile, but it gives you some nice run, or you can go the whole way and you can stay in the park and just move your, port and go right back and do it again. So that's a kind of a nice concept here with either option. Then there's these 8 fields here that are north-south, and these are the kind of fields that you can use for tournaments, for league play, etc. Then there's these east-west fields that can be also used, but also used for practice, or they can be smaller fields, and so you could have 4 of them instead of 2 junior fields. Then there's another small junior field. So this is what we can pack into this in terms of flat fields, because a lot of people have been commenting that we need more flat fields. And so this is an option that we've been looking at as well. But with this, I can tell you, based on all the community comments and based on our environmental team, we're being very careful about, if we do this, we have to have the proper mitigation and considerations about, we don't want to get phosphorus and nitrogen in the river. We don't want to do things with the wildlife, with the lighting that would disrupt bats over here. So there's a lot of considerations that go along with this particular option that you have to think about as you're building this option. And even the O&M and maintenance have a lot of considerations as well. And here's the same one with a little kind of a different, more expressive look at it. You can really see the river and how it flows through here. And one of the things to look at, where these fields are thick, there's a pretty heavy duty buffer between this interior berm, or this intermediate berm, and the river itself, for protection. So this thing here is about 50 yards, half a football field in length in these areas. This is a little bit more here, obviously a lot more here. But the idea is that this needs to be protected. We're a little thin up here, and we'll have to, keep refining this. If this is the chosen option, we would really have to think hard about how to protect this stretch of river right here. So all I'm trying to say is, no matter which option we do, we want to think through all the mitigations and options that we have as we go through these things. And that's what we're doing. And our sub that is doing the work on the recreation is refining this right now. They're doing a lot of work on this, and it may be somewhat different than what you're seeing right now. Not that in principle it's similar, but I mean, there's little things that'll be different on both of them. So that's something to look for as well in the future, because we're constantly trying to optimize and refine. So this kind of an overview thing, I could give this to Shane. Shane, why don't you do it? You're so good at this.
No, stop it. um, this is just the next steps, right? So the step 1 alternatives analysis was completed early this year. Step 2, we're working on that 30% design. And there's kind of an intermediate step there that isn't on this, and it's these two alternatives for the recreation at kind of a conceptual level, maybe like a 15% design level for those two recreation options. And that's in between that step 1 and step 2, but really we're trying to take the whole design to the 30% in 2025. Step 3 will be the 60% design, which would be next year. And then we'd move into permitting and final design for 26, 27, and then construction, maybe as early as 27, 28, like that.
Okay, and this is we had 228 comments, and I'm going to have Marty give us a little summary of all those comments. But we're going to reopen this up for this working group for comments that, that just send an email to us at turfma@washoecounty.gov. We're also recording this, so when you do verbal comments, it's something we take into consideration as well. So we will have another comment period for this go round. And what we're trying to do is get a good feeling of what the public wants about this before our board votes on, where we want to go at the 30% design in terms of how we're going to do the recreation. So that's a big deal, and I know a lot of people want to chime in on that. We're going to open that up again. Like I said, the last time, 228 comments, but I'm going to stop my share and let Marty just kind of give you a summary of what the comments have been like so far.
One moment here. Okay. Just trying to balance a bunch of windows. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So here is the comment summary. We got a whole bunch of comments. This is just an overview of what was presented, but you guys already covered that. 228 comments in total. 99 comments were broadly in favor of a nature park, with 121 broadly in favor of a combination with the nature park in the upper part of the park and then the recreation complex down below the intermediary berm. We had 8 comments that were broadly neutral. They asked questions or didn't take a hard stance one way or the other. So this is a lot of text, but I'm just gonna say essentially for concept 1, a lot of the arguments in favor emphasize, this is a space near the river. It's a unique opportunity to preserve it. You don't always get this kind of a chance to do so, so that's something to consider. And the fact that there might be lighter, more consistent traffic might make it easier for accommodating throughout the year as opposed to a concept with a recreational area. The idea of having less paved areas may also be easier for environmental concerns, so on and so forth. Stuff in favor of concept 2 was we had a lot of people on sports teams, on any kind of recreational thing, tell us about the regional shortage of flat fields, and how they liked that the concept 2 both addressed the shortage of flat fields and still provided a significant area for nature restoration. Both options have tourism assets, and both options provide enrichment to the community. So, summary of concerns. Both have concerns for maintenance. There's a concern for maintenance in concept 1 with large open areas of plants. You have invasive species, you have upkeep, and there's a concern for maintenance of fields like George and, everybody has said. And the comments that we received expressed that on both sides. There's also challenges with, responsibility for upkeep long term. We're still very early in the design, but a lot of people brought up the need to think about that. There's also challenges with, presenting citation and enforcement to possible encampments of homeless people and patrolling. And honestly, that's going to be concerned with both options, and we heard that from both sides. Let's see. There's the fact that the upper terrace may serve less individuals in the community if it is utilized as an open area compared to having it as a recreation area. So that's something to consider. And then some people mentioned that the nature option may not have enough parking spaces. Another thing to consider. There's, of course, with the option of recreation, a lot of people mentioned that they were worried about the human impact on the area. So light, noise, traffic, runoff, and trash are things that we are considering and that have to be managed if this option is something that is pursued. A lot of people mentioned the irrigation of the fields, which we've mentioned previously would most likely be reclaimed purple pipe water. Which would come from the one that they've already installed in the nearby UNR Farms area. So a lot of people also asked about benefits of fields. Would they outweigh the cost of us upkeep? How much more or less expensive would they be? So on and so forth. And they wanted to know if the fields fulfilled a real and present need, which it's pretty apparent that they do, but that was a question that we got a lot. So, pretty much everybody wants to use this to mitigate flooding. Uh, and everybody wants it to be a resource for the community where people can go, enjoy recreation, and enjoy the environment. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Deep breath. So there was a lot of support for building more flat fields, especially. As you can see, there were kind of a lot more comments. Well, not a lot more, but more comments that were asking for flat fields. We had a lot of people express the difficulty of the current drive up to Golden Eagle or down to Carson, and how it would be helpful to have closer flat fields. And then there was a really broad support around just the project in general, enhancing the environment. And yeah, and considering human impact, so on and so forth, and making sure that the park is responsibly managed going forward. Some notable suggestions that people kind of put in were the possibility of putting in a bridge across the river, a pedestrian bridge. Several people mentioned that. A possibility of blending both options. Connection to the Tahoe Pyramid Bike Trail was something that was important to a lot of people, and that is something that we are going to, be including going forward. Permeable paving was something a lot of people brought up, and that is also something that we are considering going forward, but it's early in the design process. And several people wrote in concerned about the Kiwanis Bike Project. That's another topic that I would toss off to somebody else to discuss, but it's something that we are thinking about and considering deeply. And then, so there's the consideration of access on Rock Boulevard too, which is just, something that might be thought about in the comment or brought up. And the possibility of maybe a community center as an option. And again, these are all just things people suggested as they wrote in with the comments. And that's the presentation.
Okay, then. What I would say now is this is your time to chime in, and like I said, we are recording, and so we'll take these comments in as well as the written comments. We do encourage you to also do written comments if you have a strong comment, because sometimes when you write it out, it's more pertinent and out. But the way we want to do this, where do we have that hand function somewhere? Okay, so the hand function, go ahead and just raise your hand, and we'll just start talking to people that have their hand raised, wherever that is. Let's
Does
see.
anybody have any questions?
Or comments.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, thanks so much for this presentation. These are always great. I learn so much each time. I appreciate the time and thought that's going into this on everyone's part. When you talk about habitat in the river area and also in the recreation area, it seems like you're concentrating mostly on fish. And in the river, there are a lot of different animals and birds and all that live in that area too. So the native shrubbery, the trees, like those things matter for habitat beyond beyond fish in that area there. So I would just like to see a little more attention brought to that on both of those recreation scenarios, you know, acknowledging that we need small shrubbery, native shrubbery, and then large trees too for the birds and the other animals that live there. And I think that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that is something we are trying to preserve those cottonwood galleries, for instance, and also some areas where we have some native vegetation that's in existence. But there is extensive, our environmental part of our team is working on, you know, where are we going to put different species at different levels on these different terraces. It's actually a major consideration that we have. And we're also working on looking at lighting for bats, you know, like having, if we do the park, we'd want a lighting system that doesn't like reflect out to the bridge, for instance, things like that. And also, what would we have to do? Would there need to be a curfew or something like that because of the bats? And also because of the different wildlife species and birds. Um, and so we are definitely thinking more about more than just fish. We do want to build fish habitat in there, but and you know, when you're doing good habitat, it's a whole aquatic ecosystem. There's macroinvertebrates, there's other aquatic species besides fish in the water as well. So we're trying to create a more diverse system that's more similar to what the river would have if it was in a more, you know, pristine state. So I hope that helps.
So it looks like Jim Shepard wanted to know about possible issues with runoff from more hard surfaces in option 2
Okay. Does he
in the
want to
written
just say it
comments.
or, oh, it's a written one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's a good comment. And that's a lot of people have been suggesting that we use some sort of uh, a surface that actually has infiltration in it and porous. So that's something we'll definitely look at. It might not be continuous porous, but there might be strategic places where it's porous. There's a lot of things like that we're looking into as we refine this. That's a good, that is something we're looking at, and it's a good suggestion.
And then we addressed the permeable parking. Let's see. We have some comments about how beneficial fields will be and the deficit in the region from some people. And some people are asking about possible mosquito mitigation.
Yeah, I don't know about mosquito mitigation. I
Yeah,
haven't
that's a little
thought about
early in the
that.
process.
I might be able
Was
to
there,
address the mosquito mitigation. This is Danielle Henderson.
yeah, go ahead, Danielle. Danielle
So,
works with us. She's our natural resource manager.
yeah, so just really briefly, and it is early in the planning process, but in general, a lot of these wetland areas and floodplain areas are designed to eventually drain and the water moves, so it's not stagnant for long periods of time. And those are the types of situations that the Washoe County Mosquito Abatement Program, does not like when there's like large bodies of standing water and then areas would have to be treated for mosquitoes. So if the water is moving and it drains after a while, then those types of wetland areas and flow through systems are acceptable, and there shouldn't be a need for excessive mosquito abatement in the area.
Naomi, you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, moving on from mosquitoes. I've seen a couple of the comments just about fields as well. I'm actually a sports medicine physician in the area, and it would make a very small bump in the need for fields to answer that question. There have been city and county reports that are in the public record that you can see, but we're about 34 fields short in the area for flat fields. The other issue and question I have is there any consideration of some of the turf types of fields, given that they are not filled with debris at this point and wouldn't lead to any runoff that would be problematic for the river?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something we've been talking about. Um, Shane, you want to take that one, or I'll just briefly say this, that there is advantages with turf and then there's disadvantages. And one is that natural grass, it tends to be more resilient after it gets flooded in terms of rehabilitating it. Sometimes with the debris and stuff, the turf uh, things get in the turf and it becomes very difficult to deal with, is what people are telling me. I am no turf expert, so I'll defer over to Shane.
Yeah, and we're really early in the design, and I think there's definitely an opportunity for like a championship field or a few, one or two turf fields, something like that. One of the issues is the rubber pellets in the fields can float, and so we have to be careful about that because then the rubber pellets will float away, and the field will need, and we don't want that. So we have to be we have to get the right field. But we're early in the design process. There is an opportunity for that potentially.
Yeah, there's lots of fields out there without any rubber fill. Yeah. I mean, even like coconut husks and natural products now, which are light reflecting, heat reflecting, all of that stuff. I would comment just that even having a turf field would be extremely beneficial to this part of Reno because the only turf fields that are currently available are in Golden Eagle. And the reason it matters is for plowing in the winter. These spring teams like lacrosse, I saw a comment for, and soccer, they have nowhere to practice until the snow clears. And then there's this phase where the grass has to grow, right? So they're not allowed on a lot of the fields that are available. So I think, keeping that in the consideration really would make a huge difference to a lot of kids, especially in the South of Reno.
Great comment.
Looks like we have another hand up from Spark.
Actually, Marty, it's Roger Jacobson. I'm in our Sparks office right now at our bike shop. So I had a quick question and a comment. The question was, in running the bike or the walking path from the park over to McCarran, it wasn't clear, is that going to be going underneath the bridge or is there going to be a culvert built there?
Right now, the design has it going underneath the bridge on the south side. Then it hooks around and gets that bridge, the pedestrian bridge that's downstream, that would hook into the trail to the north, the Pyramid Lake Bikeway. That's the current design. There has been talk as we refine this to perhaps have a pedestrian bridge across the river. There has been talk, I mean, there's been talk about some other options, but that's the current design right now.
Because that, as you know, will then narrow that bridge even more than where it is now, and it is a restriction. So that was certainly a concern.
No, well, actually, we would, it's complicated. I don't want to get into detailing, but you actually will back it in to some areas and it will actually increase capacity somewhat by building that trail. So on the south side. So if we mess with that bridge like that, we'd actually be somewhat increasing capacity under the current design.
Okay, because it's a narrow point now. So I had the comment was when looking at what the future would look like in this interim after the construction, it looks like what's going to be happening is the two farmers that are there will be moved out because their fields will be basically inundated with the river now. So looks like they'll be gone with their water rights. Also, as looking at the budget, the turf money is used primarily for flood control. So as I see in their budget right now, your budget now, there is no funding for active or passive recreation fields. And so my question, I guess, is then, before they can raise enough money or we can raise enough money to build ball fields or anything else, what's the situation going to look like in that interim 5 or more years, perhaps?
I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest with you. In our ICA, we can, as part of our project, do recreation that's associated with a flood project. So we obviously can do recreation at Rock-McCarran. I've got opinions from my lawyer on that. I don't know what you're talking about. So, we can do that right away. The question is, can we afford it? And that is something we're working on financially. It seems like we have the cash flow to borrow enough money, either by bonding or a loan program, to finish this project. We also have about $70 million in the bank. Much of that will go to Vista Narrows, but I'm just saying we have quite a bit of money in the bank and a cash flow that would allow us to loan quite a bit of money to finish this project, as well as Vista, as well as the North Bank, as well as these other projects that we talked about, as well. That's the idea with the cost estimates, with the loan. There is enough money, and there is enough money to do a moderate amount of recreational development, and it's in our ICA. So I hope that clears that up for you, because that's just a misnomer. We can do recreational stuff that's associated with a flood project, especially at Rock-McCarran. So
Thank you, George. That really helps me understand that better, because in reading the statute, I thought it was only restricted to just flood control.
it is, but like I said, in the ICA, it says we can, I don't want to repeat myself.
No,
All right.
thank you. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you for that. So it looks like we have
Chris,
another
oh.
comment from Art.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to commend you guys for what you've done, this desperately needed flood mitigation project. It's a shame to see industrial areas of Sparks and Reno being flooded whenever there's an event. And in so doing what you're doing, you're preserving and enhancing a lot of natural resources along the river. And the flat fill for me is a huge benefit to the entire community. I made a comment at your prior meeting that we can no longer rely on the casinos to fill up our hotel rooms. I understand it from the recreational people that if we can get enough flat fills, we can have tournaments here. Those people will come into these tournaments, will help fill some of our empty hotel rooms around Sparks and Reno, and eat at the restaurants, do shopping, things of that nature. So I see the flat fields as an economic development benefit to the area. I did have a question. I had to step away for a moment. Maybe you answer the question, but in the event, say a 50 or 100-year event, and water flow, notwithstanding this low flow, going over the levees, how do you protect the levees from erosion?
Oh, hey, Shane, are you taking off? If not, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I have a few more minutes. Yeah, we have these 2D models that show us where there's high velocities during the floods, and we protect it strategically in the places where there's high velocities, and where the velocities are low enough, then we don't have to protect it. And so we have really sophisticated models that are, fairly new to the engineering industry, on the grand scale of things. And so we have our ways to figure out exactly where the revetment is needed. So, yeah, it's just a design process.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a couple more written comments. Somebody asked about the possibility of a complementing bridge to be built upstream of McCarran Bridge.
Yeah, that's something we are definitely, it's not in the design right now, but it's something we're thinking about. We're also thinking about outside funding sources and things like that as well. That's kind of a to be determined type thing. You know, we do have money to build this project, I think, with our financial loans and the money we have in the bank and all that, but you know, we can't go too much. So it's just we got to see what we've got, you know, in terms of finances and how much the bridge will cost.
Mhm.
We just we just had a JUB actually with us designed a bridge, a pedestrian bridge in Wadsworth, and so we have a real good fix on those costs and what it might take. So we'll look into that. That's part of our refinement. We're looking at all that kind of stuff right now. But that's a good question because you know, maybe we don't want to disturb the bats there at the bridge, for instance. You know, if we depending on what the environmental review says, you know, so that can be an option.
Okay. Looks like we have a question about outreach. We are working hard to reach out to the community, and as far as that goes, I think I'm just going to read the comment straight for you, George. They asked about communication to the community. They said they only learned about this group from Facebook, and they're a lifelong resident. They've walked the river for a long time. They said, please defer to wildlife. That's definitely a top priority for us with the way that the northern portion of the project is being designed. And they said, what about downriver users of the river and how do they feel about the project?
Good questions. The downriver users, we have been really outreaching to the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, Story County, um, Rainbow Bend. Uh, so there's a lot of different stakeholders down there. We actually spent literally millions of dollars studying the downstream effects of this project in total and to see what kind of things might happen. And then we're providing mitigation for those problems. Like the bridge in Wadsworth is actually replacing a bridge that was backing up water and is making the situation better even with our project than it was under existing conditions. So that's the kind of things we're trying to do downstream. And so far, we have no letters of opposition. We do have letters of non-opposition from downstream groups. So that's that question. As far as outreach, we're trying our best. We're doing working groups. I was just on Face the State this weekend. Um, we're trying to get press releases out. We had a meeting about this at McKinley Arts and that we tried to advertise as best we could. So I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you saw this. And we're trying to get as many people as we can. We did have 228 comments to the last working group. 88 people were at the working group. So I think we're getting the word out slowly, but like I said, we're a small agency and we're trying to do our best on this.
And then somebody asked about if the recreation option is selected, will the flat fields be constructed at the same time as the nature park?
That I don't know. I would, that's in 2027, 2028. How that all works out and how we would do that is really up to our board. It's not up to me. And the board can say, look, we like the recreation, but we want to wait, or they can say, no, it needs to be built with the thing because it's so important to get these features out there, whether it's a nature park or a flat field park. So whichever, we don't know yet on that. That's really up to the board. That's why we're taking so much public input. We want to see what people feel about that and get their opinions because we want to make sure that we're doing what the public wants. I mean, we have expertise and sometimes we're doing things you may not fully understand, but on the broader thing, we want to make sure we're doing what the public wants.
Right. Okay, any other questions? Looks like we got pretty much everything as far as questions go. So I think we can wrap up the meeting if you guys are good.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody for showing up. It wasn't as big as the last one, but I think we did get some people here that didn't come to the other ones, so that's really good for us. We want as many people as possible to know about this and make sure they're, oh, we got one. Somebody wants to make a comment.
Marisa, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about it. I have to do it from my iPhone and I had some troubles here getting my hands up. Okay, my name is Marisa Ernst and I sat in the former meeting, but I didn't speak up. So I would like to kind of give a counterbalance to the many sports enthusiasts that have spoken up. And I would clearly express that I support to keep the area under discussion as close to a nature park as possible. You have described the size of the area in comparison to other parks in Breno. I think you agree that during peak times, all these parks are extremely busy. So I don't think having a park that is several times the size of Mayberry, for example, is excessive. Reno's parks and the Truckee Meadows are an extremely fast-growing urban area, and demand for places where we can experience nature are growing accordingly also. I do understand that there is a great demand for sports fields. The only difference in opinion we have is where to put them. Nature and non-human beings are not really in a strong position to ask for what they need to thrive, nor do they have economic analysts who come up with a formula that suggests that project A or B or C will create a positive economic return on investment. And, you know, to be fair, I think often these projections are a little bit over-optimistic. We live in an area where whole hillsides are moved to build a few home sites. Example, go look at what happens between Old Virginia and North McCarran. We also live in a region that registers the fastest rising temperatures. Large parcels, such as suggested under the nature park version, would help counteract this pernicious trend. And most specifically, they provide important space and refuge for nature. And that is what I wanted to let you know.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Marisa. So I just shared a screen with you. I don't know if this maybe helps, but so this is Golden Eagle, right? And then this is the Idlewilds, and it's just to give you a size comparison. So we do appreciate your comment, and I did also want to give you like a size comparison of like side by side what it would look like, maybe just roughly speaking, with that overview. But we do hear what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. So like I mean, I understand. I had children who went to AYSO soccer, you know, like 30 years ago. And yeah, like the problem is that we have like a fast expanding urban population. But in those areas with densely populated, you know, where there's a dense population, there should be automatically allowances made to have land set aside to actually have schools, recreation areas, sports fields, because sports is important. But so that we don't have to fall back on, oops, good, we have this parcel now. And that would be just wonderful for sports fields. Whereas, you know, there are other uses for this once in a lifetime opportunity that cannot be, you know, that cannot be realized in other locations.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a great
You too.
Thank you for listening here to me. Thanks.
All right, Chris?
Hi, thank you for taking the comment. And I just want to thank Marisa for saying what I was trying to put through in my comment. I'm the lifelong resident of Washoe County. My husband worked in a warehouse off of Spice Island that got flooded in 1997. So I do realize the importance of this project. But the Truckee River is just so important, and it just can't be constrained. And I love walking that because when I was going out with my husband, and we've been married 37 years, we used to walk between Cottonwood Park up to Rock Park along the river. And just seeing the changes that have happened, but being appreciative of just letting land be land, you know, and also further downstream, the Nature Conservancy, what they have done with the Truckee River closer to Wadsworth and Fernley, I think is so important. It's just, we live in the Great Basin. This is an important river, and you just can't, optimize it for, oh, let's have sports fields along here because, and it's just like, no, we need to just hold on to the nature that we have. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments before we leave? Looks like somebody just wrote some down.
Let's see. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, just Jeff
Yeah.
saying thank you. So I think
Okay.
unless anybody else has a comment. Last call.
Last call. All right. Thank you very much. And like I said, we do now have another open period for a while anyways, for at least a few weeks for more comments, written comments, that is, to our website. You can get that off our turfma.org website to get to that if you need it. And it was also given on our last slide. So anyways, thank you again, and have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.